Good evening, and you are very welcome to a special event as part of Biotopia's online event series, Escaping Extinction, Überleben. My name is Michael John Gorman. I'm the founding director of Biotopia, and Biotopia is a new museum of life and environment in development here in Munich, where we focus on inspiring curiosity, empathy, and agency to address our current environmental challenges and to reconfigure the relationship between humans and the other species with whom we share the planet. Just a few little points before we start. Wir haben simultane Übersetzung ins Deutsch. Einfach unten auf den Globus klicken und Deutsch auswählen. And please use the chat to alert my colleagues, Dora and Yasmin, who are working behind the scenes, if you're experiencing problems. We're also recording tonight's event, and it will be available a short while after today, including also German subtitles for those joining us from Germany. Today it's really an honor to host a conversation on the topic of agents of change for a better future with certainly one of the world's most celebrated conversationists and ecological activists, and also a remarkable role model for young people around the world, Dr. Jane Goodall. It's wonderful to have you with us, Jane. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be with you as well.
Thank you. And in addition to Jane, we have some other special guests who are joining us to explore the impact of Jane Goodall's ideas. And it was actually quite interesting in preparing for tonight's event. I realized I was the only one of the participants who did not have a companion animal. So we have, of course, Jane Goodall with her chimpanzee. We have Auguste von Bayern, who's also joining us. Auguste, you're very welcome. Auguste is the chair of the Förderkreis of Biotopia and is also a scientist and group leader at the Max Planck Institute for Ornithology at Seewiesen, and she works in the intelligence of crows, corvids, and parrots, and also has had a long-standing connection to the work of Jane Goodall. So, Auguste, wonderful to have you with us. Do you want to say hello to the audience?
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to have Jane among us. It's fantastic you could make it.
Thank you. And Auguste, of course, her companion animal is a crow. Our third guest actually had a sheep as his companion animal, and I'm sure he can explain the reason for that. His name is Nico Fricke, Nicholas Fricke, and Nicholas Fricke is a systems ecologist and really a pioneer in environmental education here in Munich. He is a senior sustainability manager for the Werksviertel Mitte project, and he is also the co-initiator of a wonderful educational project called the Almschule, right here in Munich, close to the Ostbahnhof. And he's speaking to us from the roof of the Werk 3 building, where he has behind him a little almhouse. Welcome, Nico. It's great to have you joining us.
Thank you very, very much. I'm really also very happy to be here in this beautiful round.
And I believe we have over 600 people joining us remotely today. So welcome to all of you. But we also will meet later some of the members of our local Roots and Shoots program who are with us today in the Biotopia Lab in Munich. And we will hear more about Roots and Shoots later. And they're called the Wurm Ranger, the members here. So you'll get to meet one or two of them later on. But first, let me turn to our guest of honor this evening, Dr. Jane Goodall. So Jane, you have been working really since the 1960s in this extraordinary area and really inspiring the world to engage with biodiversity. Probably you first became famous when you discovered the use of tools in chimpanzees in Tanzania, and have been really inspiring people around the world since then. And I suppose one of the amazing things about this discovery was that it also created a new kind of connection and empathy between humans and another mammal, another primate. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about how that changed your life when you made that discovery?
Well, Quite honestly, I loved animals, all animals, from when I was a tiny little girl. And my dream from the age of 10 onwards was to go to Africa, live with wild animals, and write books about them. And it was quite amazing that, after I'd saved up money and got there to stay with a school friend, I met Louis Leakey. And he's the one who asked me if I would go and study chimpanzees. Nobody had done it before. And nothing was really known about them. But there was some work with a captive colony showing how amazingly intelligent they are. So, quite honestly, I don't think anything at Gombe changed the way I thought about animals and our relationship to them. It's just that chimpanzees are more like us than other animals are. But, other animals have their personalities and they're very intelligent. But to actually be able to get the trust of the chimps, know them by name, to see how like us they were in many aspects of their behavior was magical, and it was amazing it worked out that way.
Yes, and you've been going back to Tanzania over the years, and also reconnecting many times with the same family of chimpanzees. I'd be interested to hear how people talk a lot about the sixth mass extinction, the biodiversity crash that we're experiencing at the moment. Have you had personal experience where you've really seen what's happening in terms of the loss of biodiversity and maybe even directly in terms of the reduction of the populations of chimpanzees?
Absolutely, and I don't have to go to Tanzania to see that. I'm speaking
Yeah.
to you from the house in the south of England where I grew up, and the numbers of birds has just dropped down. The numbers of insects has dropped down. I mean, there's no comparison now. We used to have hedgehogs and other animals. They've gone. Gombe National Park, where we still study these chimpanzees, we're now into the fourth generation. It used to be part of a forest that extended right across Africa. But by the 1990s, Gombe was a little isolated patch of forest surrounded by bare hills. And basically, the Gombe chimpanzees were trapped in that forest. And so that's when we started a program to work with the local people because they were cutting down the trees because they had to survive somehow and they'd overused their land, their numbers had grown. And so it was clear to me as I flew over, if we don't help these people find ways of making a living without destroying their environment, we can't save chimpanzees, forests, or anything else. But that same pattern right across Africa, forests disappearing, and obviously as habitat goes, numbers of the animals living there go down as well.
And what kind of change were you able to affect then in Tanzania? And were you able to work with the local people to actually transform the way they, for example, did agriculture and to change the trend in terms of the ecosystem devastation?
Yes, I think the reason it's been so successful, this program we call Take Care, or Takari, it's known as Takari, is that right from the beginning, we worked with the people. We weren't a group of arrogant white people going into a poor African village, telling them they'd messed things up and this is what we're going to do to help you. No, it was a team of local Tanzanians sitting down with the village elders and asking them, what do you think JGI can do to make your lives better? And starting there, gradually gaining their trust. And it's now a really holistic program, which includes things like scholarships to keep girls in school, microfinance opportunities for women, water management programs, restoring fertility to the land without the use of agricultural chemicals. And the people now understand that protecting the environment isn't just for wildlife, it's their own future.
Yeah.
And because we've introduced cutting edge technology, they can map out their village forest reserves and they've become our partners in conservation. There are no bare hills anymore. The trees have come back and they're setting aside land that allow the Gombe chimps to again communicate with other remnant groups. And that program is right throughout the chimp range in Tanzania, 104 villages, and in 6 other countries around chimp habitat.
Extraordinary. And one thing you've talked about a bit is how you can't really address conservation issues or ecosystem restoration unless you first address human needs and basic human needs. Can you talk a little bit more about how that figures in your work and how you combine looking at human needs with looking at the needs of different ecosystems?
Well, I mean, it's very, very clear that the old colonial way of saying, "Oh, this is a wonderful place to protect chimps. We'll throw the people out, and then it'll be safe for the chimps." That's not going to work in the long run. It's their land, and so working with the people, involving them in conservation, seeing the benefits they can get out of it, helping them find ways of starting their own environmentally sustainable small businesses. And as they come out of this terrible poverty, especially as girls get better educated, we provide family planning information, eagerly accepted. And so, whereas when I began, the average size of a family was 8 or 10, the people are really keen on educating their children. That's how you get out of poverty. They can't afford to educate 8 or 10 children. So they're mostly thinking, well, maybe 3. Some of them think 4. We want to get it down to 2, but we're not pushing for that. They're coming to it themselves. It's their decision, their realization. And so at the same time, all of this costs money, and there's not much point doing it unless the next generation is going to grow up to be better stewards than we've been. So I started a Roots and Shoots program in Tanzania in 1991, involving young people in projects to make the world better for people, for animals, for the environment. And as I think you know, it's now in 68 countries and growing. It's all through Tanzania and growing rapidly in, well, everywhere that we work.
Yes, Roots and Shoots is an extraordinary success and really an amazing example of creating activists who are engaged with the environment, but not just with environmental issues. I mean, I understand that it also addresses humanitarian issues, and it's been now 30 years since you began that initiative. And I think one of the key things about your work is this focus on young people. And why is it you think that we really need to activate and engage young people around these topics?
Well, because they're the ones who are inheriting the mess that we've made. And we want to equip them with tools that will enable them to try and heal some of the harm that we've inflicted. And if they don't rise to this challenge, then our great grandchildren will have no planet left. We really do have to take action now. And with climate change and species extinction, it's pretty grim. And I think this recent pandemic is a real wake-up call because we brought it on ourselves by disrespecting animals, trafficking them so that pathogens can jump from an animal to a person and maybe start a new disease like COVID-19. And so we need a new relationship with the natural world. We've got to stop destroying all the environments and make space for these other amazing animals and the habitats where they live, the ecosystems, because we actually are part of the ecosystem. We depend on the natural world for food, water, clothing, everything. And if we go on destroying the ecosystem, that's the end of us, seriously. But we've still got this window of time. That's why in my 88th year, I'm more passionate than ever to do more than ever to wake people up and so that everybody takes action.
And it's amazing that you lit this spark back in 1991 with creating the Roots and Shoots program. First of all in Tanzania, but now, as you said, really worldwide. And now I think there's more of an awareness about some of these major challenges, climate change and the biodiversity crash. And there's also, we're seeing more youth activism around these topics. And how do you, as a kind of one of the pioneer activists around these issues, how do you see the latest generation of youth activists, groups like Fridays for Future? How do you see the work that is going on now, often youth-led activist initiatives?
Yeah, well, I mean, the young people are rising to the challenge. There's no question about it. And they are learning more about the problems. The environment is a subject in schools now, which it never used to be. There was no environmental programs taught in schools in Tanzania when I got there. Now it's in every school. And in fact, Roots and Shoots is in every single part of Tanzania. It's one of the best programs worldwide, and they're very proud of that. So I see that young people in every country are realizing, I mean, they get the information. And once they have the information and we empower them to take action, encourage them to take action, they are, as we speak, changing the world. And it's everywhere. Everywhere, young people are rising to this challenge. And some of the projects of Roots and Shoots in different countries is pretty amazing. So,
and how hopeful do you feel now about the future based on, I mean, you've probably witnessed a lot of devastation, but also maybe some signs of hope. On balance, how much of a chance do you think humanity has to address the ecological crisis that we have?
well, if we don't take action now, it will be too late. We do have a window of time. And so that's why it's so really important to encourage and work with young people, to encourage them to take action, but no violence. The way to change people is you have to change people from within. So I'm concentrating not only on working with youth, which is terribly important, but also you have to work from the top because we don't have time for all the young people to rise into decision-making positions. Some of them are there now, since we began 30 years ago, and they seem to take their values with them that they gained when they were members of Roots and Shoots. And so, but while they're growing up to take over with new values, values of respect, respecting each other, respecting the environment, respecting animals. But at the same time, we've got to try and influence the decision makers of today who are up at the top. And it's happening, and consumers have a huge role to play. If you think a company is producing its goods in an unethical way, like using oil palm from Indonesia, destroying the rainforest, for example, don't buy the product. And there again, unless we alleviate poverty, this isn't going to work because if you're really poor, you do what it takes to stay alive. We have the luxury of going into a store and deciding, no, we'll pay just a little bit more and get something produced ethically. And if we pay a little bit more, we'll value it more and waste less, the waste of food particularly, but the waste of everything. I mean, people just buy and throw away, buy and throw away. And we've got to get to this circular economy where we, like I grew up in World War II. We are probably our forefathers, our grandfathers were probably fighting each other. It's so strange. I've got so many friends in Germany, and we often smile.
I'm Irish, so not my grandfather.
Well, my grandfather was Welsh. Your father, then. Well, you know what I mean, anyway.
Yes. But it's true that generation had a different sense about frugality and about also being careful with reusing waste and so on, which we need to relearn probably, I think, from you.
It's not the children's fault today. I mean, they grow up and everything they take for granted. It's not their fault. But in the war, everything was rationed. And, this amazing mother who nurtured my love of animals and helped me, Straight after the war, she let me go off to Germany to stay with a German family because she wanted
Yes,
me to understand that Nazism and Hitler were not equated with Germans. I mean, not many
yes.
mothers would have done that straight after the war.
Extraordinary. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a true act of empathy. Yeah. And just a last question before we move on to Augusta, but we will come back to you then, Jane. But I would like to ask, not every young person has the chance to go off to Tanzania and to be surrounded by chimpanzees in this extraordinary environment. But if a young person listening tonight is interested in getting involved and getting engaged with the environment, what would your advice to them be?
Well, first of all, to join Roots and Shoots because we have all these questions with answers laid out. But there's always in some environment. I mean, even going through a city, if you look, I mean, there are sparrows, there are pigeons, and I found in the most grim city streets there'll be a little crack in the paving stone. It's all
Yes.
concrete, and yet a flower comes through. Nature is absolutely amazing. And we had one of our Roots and Shoots program in a big city, and they took the children. They were explorers, and they went around and they looked for nature, and they found in the middle of this city 3 species presumed to be extinct. So nature is everywhere.
Incredible.
We just need to
Yes.
encourage young people to get out and learn about it.
I think that's a really important message, and that one can discover new things even in a major city is amazing. I heard recently they discovered a new type of frog in Manhattan, for example, which had never been observed before. So, wonderful. Well, I would thank you so much, Jane. And please stay with us, and we're going to come back to you. But first, I would like to bring in somebody who was also inspired by your work at a very early age, who is Augusta von Bayern. And Augusta is Princess Augusta von Bayern. She doesn't like being called that, but she is. And she is also, perhaps more importantly, Dr. Augusta von Bayern as a scientist. And she is the founding chair of the Förderkreis of Biotopia, which is the organization that has really galvanized support around this project to create a new Museum of Life for Munich. So Augusta, great to have you with us. And perhaps to start, can you tell us how on earth did you get to meet Jane Goodall? How did that happen?
Well, long before I met her, I was captivated by her books. As a child, I was deeply fascinated by chimpanzees of the Gombe Reserve, by all her books. They were always beside my nighttime table. And I also devoured the books of Konrad Lorenz and was very early on determined, mostly because of Jane Goodall, to become an ethologist and study animal behavior, preferably in the African bush. But I had the immense luck of meeting her in person later through a friend, Professor Irenaeus Eibel-Eibesfeld, a famous scientist of the Max Planck Institute who studied human behavior. And he's an old friend of Jane Goodall. He visited her in Gombe, and I think he was the first to film the tool use behavior Jane had discovered. And he had invited her to the Max Planck Institute Season to give a presentation, and he invited me. And I was a teenager. I think I was the youngest person in the audience, and I was absolutely captivated by Jane's presentation, which mostly focused on the problems of our planet was already facing then. And she talked about roots and shoots. And after this talk, which really did change my life severely, after this talk, there was a dinner, and I was the youngest person in the audience, very shy and insecure. And she saw me among all the famous scientists and me to sit next to her, purely because she saw that I was insecure. And then this was, of course, wonderful to be able to talk to her in person. And from that moment, of course, I was absolutely determined to do what I can to make a positive change happen on this planet. The most important message is the one that together we can make the world a better place, that we can change this world. And that's the main message of the Roots and Shoots youth organizations. That's why it's named Roots and Shoots, because shoots, they're so weak, but still they can break through concrete. And each child, each person on the planet can have a huge impact. But of course, and it doesn't matter how big the impact is. The important thing is that we do what each of us can do, and together we can change the world.
So do you think that your meeting Jane back then, when you were 14 years old, affected your choice then to become a scientist working on animal behavior and bird intelligence?
Well, as I said already, as a child, reading the books, I was determined to study behavior. And I went to Africa, to South Africa, to study zoology in Cape Town. And there I looked for a PhD opportunity, and I discovered I wanted to go to Africa in the bush to study behavioral ecology of meerkats. That was my original dream. And then I learned about a new research field, corvid intelligence. And then I got very enthusiastic about studying the minds of animals. Because Jane, she was a pioneer in really understanding the behavior of our closest relatives. At that time, there was really hardly anything known about their behavior. And it's amazing how new this field of research actually is, if you think about it. So in the 1960s, we hardly knew anything about our closest or simply the behavior of our closest relatives. In the 1990s, people started studying the minds of our closest relatives. And only in the end of the 1990s, people started studying the minds of other intelligent beings. And that's what my field of research is about, studying the minds of very distantly related beings. For example, the minds of crows and minds of parrots. Our last shared ancestor lived 200 million years ago, 300 million years ago, sorry. And I mean, the closest, the last the last ancestor of chimpanzees and humans lived 6 million years ago. And still we find that crows parallel the great apes in their intelligence. And that's an amazing finding, which should make us consider how we think about other species on this planet.
And Augusta, you began a Roots and Shoots program here in Munich. Can you tell me about that, and you know, how you started it up, and how did you go about it, and how did it work?
After meeting Jane Goodall at the Max Planck Institute, I was, of course, determined to join Roots and Shoots, and I contacted the local institute, Jane Goodall Institute Germany back then, and I set up a first Roots and Shoots group at our school and started working for the Jane Goodall Institute. I helped a little bit with fundraising, and we carried up a pigeon on as a sign for as a messenger of peace on the Zugspitze, the highest mountain in Germany. So little things, but I was determined to help where I could.
I'm glad we can thank Jane for your great expertise in fundraising, which Biotopia has also benefited from enormously. But actually, to come to Biotopia, so we are really together developing this new museum in Munich, and I would be very interested to have your thoughts on how Jane's ideas could really infuse what we're doing with Biotopia, and how do you see the ideas and the projects that Jane has initiated flowing into what we're doing here with Biotopia?
I think there are perfect synergies. Biotopia is really absolutely in line with the ideas of the Jane Goodall Institute and Roots and Shoots, because the main mission of Biotopia is to inspire agency. So through curiosity for nature and enthusiasm for nature and the wonders of life, one also creates empathy for other species and really encourages people to shift their perspectives and look at animals with other eyes. But the main mission is to inspire agency, to make people act and take responsibility for our planet. And inspiring agency is exactly what Roots and Shoots is about. Everybody can make their own contribution to make the world a better place. And that's exactly the goal of Biotopia too. Address our big environmental challenges the planet is facing at the moment.
Thank you. And I would now like to turn to our third guest, Nicolas Fricke. And Nico, so your companion animal, Augustus, was a crow, yours is a sheep. Perhaps you can explain why that is the case and tell us where you are joining us from today.
Thank you very much. The journey is a long one because the sheep itself is actually such a primitive animal. Everyone knows it, but there's a long story until I got to the point to really work with sheep. And it really started in the early 80s. I could not even swim. And my father, Hans Fricke, told his kids, my sister and my lovely brother, to assist him in his experiments he did in the Red Sea. He wanted to prove that fish can think and that fish can feel. And we as kids, we could really not, I could not really swim. He put me into a diving suit and we had to set up these experiments underwater. And that was actually my first contact to nature and my first contact to animals. And then the journey, I must say, I'm really very lucky to having experienced all these milestone events in my life. It came to the point that I was lucky enough to go to South Africa straight after the apartheid system. And I met two farmers, Ian and Lisette, with us. They wanted to bring the Loxodonta africana, the African elephant, back to the Knysna forests, which is a biodiversity hotspot. And I was 12 years old, and I thought that I had this amazing chance to also work with these animals. And then further on, that was most probably the luckiest moment in my life when I was diving in the submersible of my dad called Yago in 400 meter depth at the African island called Comore Island, where my dad not recovered. Sorry, my English. I don't speak English so much, so I have to apologize. He found this living fossil, the coelacanth, and I was lucky enough to see these animals together with our pilot in the deep sea, and that was actually the most magical moment of my whole entire life. And underwater, I really thought about you, Jane Goodall, because after I learned swimming and I learned reading, and I also read your books and these this intense research you did with primates and chimpanzees that at that point underwater, I thought, wow, that must be the feeling that Jane also had in her early days. And coming back to Europe, I then founded an NGO in South Africa with the intention to actually give back these experience I was lucky enough to experience. And I wanted to, I knew, then I went to the Arctic and I saw the melting ice, and that was actually also a very important expedition I did, because I saw the melting ice. We were sailing through open seas where actually the pack ice should have been in this time of the years. And then I had a lot of time on those ships. We were on 2 months sailing trips without seeing a single house or even a person in the ice and on and offshore. And I had a lot of time to think, what is actually your plan of life? And my plan of life is to give to give back nature its beauty, and to help our beautiful planet to sustain. And my strategy is to motivate people to do so, to find solutions for nature conservation. And then I came back here to Munich. And I thought, actually, we all know the urban societies grow and grow, and the pressure on our planet is very high, especially in urban areas. And so I thought, I don't have to travel to Africa again. I have to find solutions here, and that made me. That was actually my journey to help this planet sustain. And coming back to the question you asked in the beginning, the sheep is actually
tight on
beautiful.
time, so please do.
Yeah,
we're a little bit short on time, so maybe you can just cut to the sheep. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the sheep is a very good ambassador because everyone knows it, and we are having sheep here on our rooftop, and we want urban kids to experience these animals, and not having like a petting zoo, but really in our environmental program, the Almschule, we want to give the kids the chance to interact with these animals. And you can even do research on those animals as well. They also have cognition, they have feelings, and they are also intelligent. And that's a little bit in short words my story.
That's a fantastically complex route to get to the sheep. I love it. But Nicholas, you're now sitting outside the Almschule. You have also got some of the sheep around you, I believe. But it's one of the most radically different kinds of urban farms I've ever seen. So it's a wonderful place. And it's also supported by the Otto Eckhart Stiftung. And I believe you have something special that you would like to give to Jane. So maybe I shall allow you to
I'm very honored
this.
to do so. We have, with our foundation, I'm now honored to hand over this certificate to you, Jane, from the Stiftung Otto Eckhart, right from the Stadtalm, the rooftop here in Munich. And I want to hand it over to you. Maybe we try it like this.
Yes, it's gone. Wonderful. And tell us what this prize is that you're giving Jane. Can you say what it is, Nico, the prize?
Yeah, this prize is dedicated to Roots and Shoots and all the local initiatives that Roots and Shoots also supports here in Germany and Munich. And Jane will also tell about the local project we have here, and it's dedicated to this project.
Wonderful. So, Jane, we actually have a couple of guests with us today from the what are called the Wurm Ranger, which is the local Roots and Shoots group in Munich. And I think they wanted to, if they may, ask you a couple of questions. So we have Lena and Paula who are with us today with some of their friends. Hi, guys. Hallo. Wir können gerne auf Deutsch sprechen, wenn das einfacher ist. Ja. Also du bist Lena, oder? Ja, und hast du eine Frage für Jane Goodall?
Ja, sie fängt an.
Okay. So Paula is going to first ask the question. Paula, was ist deine Frage für Jane?
Also meine Frage ist, what do you like most about chimpanzees?
So what do you ask? What do you like most about chimpanzees? Is the question. It's probably got a big answer. We can't hear Jane, I think, at the moment. Is the microphone off, maybe? Yeah. I think Can you switch your microphone on? It seems to be muted still. So maybe while we're waiting for that, you could say your question as well, Lena. Auf Deutsch, gerne. Ja. Was wäre deine Frage? What would your question be? Okay. So what would your question be for Jane Goodall?
What is your best experience with the chimpanzee?
So Lena and Paula are from a wonderful group, which is a local branch of Roots and Shoots, which is actually called the Wurm Ranger. And the Wurm Ranger are based around a river near Munich. Also ihr seid hier aktiv nebenbei an diesem Fluss, der Wurm, oder? You're based on the river called the Wurm. Und was macht ihr dort? What do you do there?
Wir schneiden das Unkraut zurück und
you get rid of weeds, yeah. And what else?
yeah.
Do you do anything? Do you see any animals there? You take rubbish away from the river. Fantastic, yeah. And remove the weeds from the river. And was gibt's für Tiere dort am Wurm? Was sieht man? So there are birds, ducks, insects. What else?
Die Bienen.
Bienen, ja. Libellen auch, sieht man, ja. Dragonflies, ja. Okay.
Es gibt auch Fische viele.
Ja.
Es gibt auch. Es gibt eigentlich viele Tiere. Ameisen, Ameisen.
Okay. Und ist das einfach Teil von die Wurm Ranger zu werden? Is it simple to become a member of the Wurm Ranger? Is it easy to join up? Ist das einfach?
Dann musst du
Ja, toll. Ja. Weil ich habe 2 Jungs von 5 und 7 Jahren alt, also vielleicht können sie mitmachen einmal. Also I have 2 boys who are like 5 and 7 and maybe they're a little bit young maybe, but maybe vielleicht sind sie ein bisschen zu jung oder ist das noch? Ja, okay. 3 Jahre alt schon, wow, toll. Ja, super. Und I don't know if we have Jane back. I think
what I want to say to you two is that what you're doing is making such a difference, you and your friends. And it's young people like you who give me the most hope for how my great-grandchildren will find the world, because you're making a difference now, every day, aren't you? So that's fantastic. And so I think I have a certificate to give you. Is that right?
Look. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah. So we're going to hand it over.
Yes. To you. There it comes.
Here it is. Yes, over the airways by magic. Incredible. So, kannst du zeigen vielleicht an der, ja, super. Ja.
That's it.
So thank you. So, and now let's, wollt ihr bedanken? Do you want to, so, Thank you so much. And this support now will actually enable the Wurmranger to do many more activities. But Lena and Paula did have a quick question for you, Jane. So Paula, do you want to ask your question again?
Why do I like chimps? What do
you like most about chimpanzees? Yeah.
I hear you all the time. So what I love about chimpanzees is that we're still learning new things about them. We've been studying them now for 60 years. So we've seen mothers have children, children grow up and have children, and those children grow up and have children. So we now know that there are good mothers and bad mothers, and the good mothers are supportive of their children, like my mother was of me, and they do better. And the bad mothers, their children are always a little bit insecure and they don't do as well.
Hast du verstanden?
A little bit.
Kannst du deine Frage, also your question was the most amazing experience that Jane had with chimpanzees? Yeah?
Yeah.
So what was the most incredible experience you've had with chimpanzees in your life?
Well, I think one of the most wonderful ones was this old female Flo, and she had a little infant. He was the first infant anybody's ever watched develop in the wild. And when I got there, Flo was frightened like all the other chimps were. Gradually, she came to realize I wasn't dangerous. And then she had this little tiny baby. And he was just beginning to learn how to walk. He was about 5 months old. And Flo actually let him totter up towards me. And he reached out and he touched my nose. And Flo was a bit worried. She had a hand around him, but she let him come. And that was an amazing, amazing moment for me.
Wonderful. So many thanks. Vielen Dank an ihr beiden. Thank you. And do you want to wave goodbye to Jane and everybody? Yeah. Like,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Vielen Dank. And thank you for this great support for the Wurmranger. And yeah, we're coming to the end. Jane has another place to go to, more projects to support, and more good to do to help us address the planetary challenges that we're facing right now. So it was truly an honor to have you with us, Jane, and very, very inspiring. And really thank you for giving us your time on behalf of Biotopia, on behalf of all of us watching today. And also thank you to Augusta and Nico for joining us and for sharing your experiences as two people who've been inspired by the work of Jane. And I hope that all of you who've joined us today are now feeling empowered to go out and to make even a small positive difference to some of the challenges we face. And Roots and Shoots is a great place to start. So I thoroughly recommend that. Today's event has been recorded. It will be going online soon, and you're welcome to rewatch it. And unfortunately, we don't have any time because for questions from the audience today, but we do hope that you will join us soon again for further Biotopia events. And just to end the event today, we're going to close with a slideshow which shows you some of the wonderful projects of the Roots and Shoots group here in Munich, the Wurmranger. Thank you very much, and hope you enjoyed the event. Good night.
Thank you.